with me on a journey to Africa. Imagine, if you will, we're not here anymore. Instead, we're all standing on top of this rolling green hill. There's more hills here in the distance. These beautiful white birds are circling up above us. And as far as the eye can see, there are these fields of sugarcane. Right here, there's a mango tree. And we're standing on this dirt road. It has this soil so red you've never seen anything like it before. I want you to imagine the culture that's there as well. It's this vibrant culture, a place of colorful dresses, a place of drums. It's a culture where we still embrace stories as a way to pass on lessons. And I want to do that with you today. I want to tell you a story. It's not the story we've typically heard of Africa lately. This isn't Ebola, this isn't HIV. This is actually a story about ability, a story about development. It's the story of Oliva. Now, Oliva is a girl. She's about 17 years old. I met Oliva when I was volunteering in Uganda at a school for children that have intellectual disabilities. Oliva was incredible. She speaks 3 languages. She speaks Luganda, she speaks English, and she speaks sign language. When you're at this school, it's clear that she's the matriarch of the entire school. If there's a fight, you go to Oliva. If you need a hug, you go to Oliva. For me, it wasn't much different. She was my confidant. She was my translator, more importantly. If I was having trouble, I went to Oliva. In fact, every day we used to sit together under our mango tree on this little bench that was just big enough for the 2 of us. And she'd teach me sign language, or she'd tell me stories. Now, Oliva was the oldest girl at this school. And I started to wonder what would happen to Oliva when she left the school. 17, 18 years old, it was about time for her to go on. Now, if Oliva was here in America, we'd be watching these great YouTube videos, I know you've seen them before, of a girl who just got accepted to college and her reaction to it. Or maybe she just got her first job. But Oliva wasn't born here in America. Oliva was born in a developing country, and Oliva was born with Down syndrome. And in her country, that defines her. So I wanted to talk to Oliva and see what she thought would happen when she left school. So we're under our mango tree, and I turn to her and I say, Oliva, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she gave me very funny answers at first. She said she wanted to clean, and she wanted to fetch water. And I said, Oliva, if you could do anything, absolutely anything, what would you do? And finally she said, I want to cook. More than that, I want to have a restaurant, and I want to buy a house. I want that house to be right on the lake, and I want it to have 2 bedrooms so my mom can come and live with me. It's a beautiful dream, and it was more beautiful because it was possible. Given the simple economy in Uganda, most people live off of family businesses. So it wasn't so far-fetched for Oliva to have this dream. But there were a couple hiccups to her dream. The first is that Oliva was not living with her mother at the time. See, in places like Uganda, if you have a disability, it's considered a curse. In fact, it's considered punishment for something wrong the mother has done. So Oliva's mom, not wanting to face the shame, had sent Oliva away. At the time, Oliva was living in a foster family, a house about 3/4 the size of this stage, with 10 children, and she hated it. So instead, she chose to live on the street between that home and her mother's home. I was lucky at the time that a very good friend of mine was a social worker in Uganda, and she had done a lot of work reuniting families that had children with disabilities. So I asked her to come out and to help with Oliva. And she did, and we met with her mom a couple times. And we just wanted to explain to her mom how to embrace her child. We wanted to explain to her all these incredible things that Oliva could do. And while we were explaining this, her mom just broke down. She just started sobbing, and we couldn't figure out why. We weren't yelling at her. We weren't trying to make her feel bad. We weren't saying she was wrong. And we said, why are you crying? What's wrong? And she looked at us and she said, I'd never looked at her as a person before. I'd never looked at her as my daughter. I'm happy to say that social worker kept going back and working with Oliva's mom, and today they have been reunited and they are living together. Now, the second hiccup in Oliva's dream is that she was about to age out of primary school. She only had a 4th grade education, and she couldn't read. In fact, 99% of girls with disabilities in developing countries are illiterate. 97% of children with disabilities in Uganda won't finish primary education. Oliva was stuck in this system. Now, it wasn't because she wasn't in school. She'd been in school for a number of years. It was the fact that she had teachers who weren't trained in special needs at all. There's only one university that has a program in special needs. It's a certificate program, and it includes deaf and blind and intellectual disabilities. And none of her teachers had been trained. Add to that, the only resources at the school were a paper and pencil. So even if they were trained, it would still have been a struggle. So how to address this hiccup? Well, I took a quick trip back to America, and I brought with me some incredible programs that we have here. Programs similar to things that have been showcased today. Things like a sight reading program we brought over, a math manipulative program was brought over, and then did very fundamental trainings with these teachers. I want to pause on Oliva's story for a second and tell the story of a girl named Sarah. Sarah was in my class. She was one of my students. My class was very beginners, the lowest level class, and we were counting 1 to 10, just 1 to 10. Sarah had very severe cerebral palsy, and speech was a problem for her. And she had been in this class practicing counting 1 to 10 for a number of years. So I took a couple of my communication tools, a couple simple resources, and I sat with Sarah one day and I said, Sarah, count 1 to 10 for me. And she did, immediately. And I was like, well, that's strange. Sarah, keep going. And she went to 100. And I said, Sarah, can you add for me? And she did. And I said, Sarah, can you subtract for me? And she did. See, it was just simple trainings, simple communication that made us realize that Sarah and many of her other classmates had been learning all along. They just had no way to express it. So with simple trainings, Sarah and 15 other students were moved up in the school, and they've kept moving up since then. There was a third hiccup to Oliva's beautiful dream, and it was Oliva didn't know how to cook. Some people got it. If you want to start a restaurant, cooking is kind of important. This was a much easier issue to solve. See, in the afternoons, the school that she was at had plans for vocation programs, but they didn't have funding for teachers and they didn't have funding for materials. What they did have was an oven. So I went out and I got flour and sugar and butter, and I started cooking with Oliva. Eventually, that would become sponsoring a vocation training instructor to come, and he taught her how to cook local foods. Some more kids have joined that class, and they actually sell the foods now, so it's a self-sustaining program. There's one more bit to this. Electricity in Africa can be a little spotty. It comes and it goes. So Oliva, when we would cook together, we had this one recipe in case the power was gone. Really, really simple recipe. It was only 3 ingredients. We smashed up some cookies, we threw in some sugar, and we added in Sim butter, which is just like our peanut butter. We mashed it all together and we made these little cookie balls. We would give it out to all the kids and they loved it. And we were doing this one day and I realized Oliva had given me a very simple recipe. And it was a recipe which would let us tap into her ability. Again, very simple, just 3 ingredients: quality education, vocation training, and outreach. And that was a recipe for limitless possibilities, a recipe to tap into this new generation, this new workforce. It was a recipe that we'd used with Oliva, and now she was this incredible role model. She's breaking down barriers even today. Now Oliva, she's my personal inspiration, but she's starting a movement. She's paving the way for millions of other children in developing countries to become the inspiration for other people. Before I go, I want to leave you, here's a quick picture of Oliva. I want to leave you with a quote before I go. It's one that's really resonated with me since I met Oliva. It's a Shel Silverstein quote. I'm sure there's some people who are very familiar with him here. And it goes like this. Listen to the mustn'ts, child, listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves. Then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. Thank you.